Hello everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Confessions. It was raining so hard that night the gutters were spilling over, and I was standing in the hallway, holding a stack of unopened mail, when Madison froze with her hand on the doorknob. Not the casual kind of freeze when you forget your keys, the kind where your whole body goes still, like you've just remembered something you don't want anyone to know. She turned her head slightly, not enough to meet my eyes, and said, "I'm not coming back tonight." The words hung there, mixing with the sound of rain pounding against the front windows. I didn't even ask why. I just nodded, the stack of mail trembling in my hands because suddenly my fingers felt numb. She opened the door, but didn't step outside right away. Instead, she looked back over her shoulder, almost as if waiting for me to say please don't go. But my throat was tight, and the only thing I managed was this pathetic, "Okay." She left. The door clicked shut. It wasn't until later, maybe hours, maybe minutes, that I noticed she'd left her wedding ring on the hallway table, right next to a half-empty coffee cup. No note. No explanation. Just the ring, cold and small against the dark wood. By the third day, I thought maybe I'd get a call telling me she'd made up her mind, maybe even an apology. Instead, I got a message that said, "I think I made a mistake. Can we talk?" And even though part of me wanted to believe that meant she was coming home, something about that message didn't feel like love. It felt like panic. I agreed to meet her, though my gut twisted the entire drive there. She didn't suggest a coffee shop or our house or even the little park where we used to sit on summer evenings. Instead, she picked a diner off the highway that we'd never been to, the kind of place where the lights buzz faintly, the booths have cracked red vinyl, and you can smell the fryer oil before you even step inside. It was far enough from our neighborhood that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew, and that fact alone made me feel like I wasn't walking into a conversation, but a confession. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the back corner, her hair pulled up like she was trying to hide her face. There was a coffee cup in front of her, untouched, and her phone lying face down on the table. She didn't smile when she saw me, no relieved grin, no teary-eyed, "I missed you." Just this tight, restless look, like she was working up the nerve to say something she didn't want to. "You came," she said, like she wasn't sure I actually would. I slid into the booth across from her, my palms damp. "Your text, you said you made a mistake." Madison's eyes flicked toward the window, where rain streaked down in thin silver lines. "I did. But I don't think you're going to see it the way I do." Her voice had that shaky quality, the one she used when she was cornered in an argument. I hated that I still noticed these things, hated that I still cared. My chest felt tight, my throat dry, but I pushed anyway. "Then help me understand. You walk out. You leave your ring behind. You disappear for days. And now you want to talk. What changed?" She took a breath, deep, slow, like she was buying herself time, but before she could answer, her phone buzzed. She didn't pick it up. She didn't even flip it over. She just slid it a few inches farther away, like it was dangerous. And that's when I realized, whoever was on the other end of that phone had something to do with all of this. I wish I could say I demanded the truth right there. I wish I could tell you I took control of the conversation. But I didn't. I just sat there, feeling like a spectator in my own life, while she sipped her coffee and avoided my eyes. Finally, she said it. Quietly, like she was testing how the words would sound out loud. "I think I trusted the wrong person." It hit me like a punch, but before I could even ask who she meant, a shadow passed across the diner's rain-speckled window, and she froze, her eyes widening in a way I hadn't seen since the night she left. That was the moment I knew, whatever mistake she'd made wasn't just about leaving me. It was about stepping into something, or with someone, she now desperately wanted to get away from. The way her eyes locked on that shadow outside made me feel like we were suddenly in some low-budget thriller, except I wasn't the hero, I was the guy who didn't even know he'd been pulled into the plot until it was too late. Madison's knuckles went white around her coffee cup. She didn't blink, didn't move, just kept staring until the shadow slid away and disappeared into the dark. Then, just like that, she let out a breath she'd been holding for far too long. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice cracking halfway through. I was already bracing for her to say it was nothing, but she didn't even try that line. She just shook her head, a tiny movement, like saying it out loud would set something in motion she couldn't stop. "You wouldn't understand," she whispered. It was such a stupid thing to say, and it cut deeper than she probably realized. I leaned forward, my elbows digging into the sticky diner table. "Try me. You dropped the word mistake into my life like a grenade. You tell me you trusted the wrong person, and now you're looking at the door like you expect them to come in here and drag you out. I think I deserve at least one name." But she didn't give it. Instead, she stirred her coffee, though there wasn't any sugar in it, just spinning the spoon slowly as if the motion alone could keep her from talking. The silence stretched so long I started to hear the rain hitting the diner roof in a steady rhythm. That's when my mind started spinning. Was it another man? Someone from work? Someone she'd been seeing before she asked for the divorce? And if it was, why did she look scared instead of smug? Finally, she set the spoon down, her hands trembling just enough for me to notice. "If I tell you," she said slowly, "you'll wish I hadn't." That sent a shiver down my spine. I hated the way she made it sound like she was protecting me. Protecting me from what? When we left the diner, I half expected to see that shadow again, maybe leaning against a car or standing under the streetlight. But the lot was empty except for my sedan and a beat-up truck parked by the dumpster. Madison hugged her coat tight, eyes darting to every corner like she was making sure we were alone. As I pulled out of the parking lot, she finally spoke again, barely above a whisper, as if the rain on the windshield might drown it out. "Don't ask me about him again." She didn't say a name, but she didn't need to. The way she said him was enough to tell me there was someone specific. Someone real. And whatever had happened between them was the reason she was sitting back in my car instead of wherever she'd been for those 5 days. I drove the rest of the way in silence, but my mind wasn't quiet. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the truth, or if finding it out would blow my entire world apart for good. When I dropped Madison back at her apartment, yes, apparently she'd gotten herself a place while I was still trying to figure out if we had a future, she didn't invite me in. She just mumbled something about being tired and disappeared behind the door. I sat in my car for a full minute, engine idling, staring at the faint glow of her kitchen light through the blinds. It felt like there was a whole world going on inside there that I wasn't part of anymore. But the thing about knowing someone for years is you also know their patterns, and Madison's never been one to go straight to bed when she's stressed. She's the type who cleans, rearranges things, maybe blasts music to reset her mood. That night, though, the blinds stayed still. No movement. No music. Nothing. I should have gone home, but instead I drove to the convenience store down the street from her building, grabbed a coffee I didn't even want, and waited in the far corner of the lot where I could still see her apartment window in the distance. I told myself I was being paranoid, that if I saw anything, it'd probably be her eating cereal in her pajamas. But around midnight, I saw the unmistakable sweep of headlights across her blinds, followed by a shadow. A male shadow. The figure stayed for less than 5 minutes. No lingering, no lights turning on. It was as if he'd just come to deliver something, or pick something up. My chest tightened with this awful cocktail of jealousy and dread. I told myself I'd confront her about it the next day, but when I finally saw her again, she was acting like the diner meeting hadn't even happened. No talk of the mistake, no signs of fear, just casual, meaningless small talk, which somehow felt even more suspicious. It wasn't until she stepped out of the room to take a phone call that I got my first real clue. I hadn't planned to snoop, but there it was, sitting right on the edge of the kitchen counter, a folded receipt from a storage facility 2 towns over. The date was from 2 days earlier, right in the middle of her so-called time to think. I don't know why, but the second I saw it, I knew it mattered. When she came back in, I asked casually, "Been renting a storage unit?" She froze for half a second, just enough for me to catch it, before forcing a laugh and saying it was just for some old furniture. "But Madison doesn't store furniture. She sells it. Always has. It's her thing, find something cheap, fix it up, flip it online." The idea that she'd suddenly decide to pay to store something instead of making money off it made zero sense. That night, I drove to the storage facility. I didn't even know what I was expecting to find, maybe a bunch of dusty chairs and boxes, but when I parked across the street, I saw something that made my stomach churn. The same beat-up truck I'd seen outside the diner was there, backed up to a unit with its door half rolled down. A tall guy in a dark jacket was moving something heavy inside. I couldn't see his face, but I knew in my gut this was him. The wrong person, she'd mentioned. I sat there in the dark, fingers gripping the steering wheel, torn between confronting him right then and keeping quiet until I had more answers. In the end, I just stayed in my car, watching, while he locked up the unit and drove away into the night. By the time I got home, my head was spinning with questions I didn't want the answers to. But one thing was certain, whatever was in that storage unit wasn't just old furniture. And Madison's mistake wasn't going to stay hidden for long. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of that beat-up truck backed up to the storage unit, the shadow of the man moving inside, and Madison's face in the diner when she saw someone outside the window. My mind kept looping it all together, trying to connect pieces that didn't quite fit. By the time the sun came up, I'd convinced myself there was no way I could just sit and wonder anymore. I had to see what was in that unit. I waited until late afternoon, figuring that if the guy came back, it would probably be after dark. The storage place was one of those sprawling, single-level facilities with identical orange doors and long stretches of cracked pavement. I drove past it twice before I finally worked up the nerve to pull in. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it over the rumble of my engine. Finding the unit wasn't hard. The number from the receipt burned in my mind, and as I got closer, I noticed something that made my palms sweat even more, a faint smear of what looked like dried mud along the bottom edge of the door, like something heavy had been dragged inside recently. I glanced around. No one in sight. Just the wind rattling a loose metal sign and the faint hum of traffic from the road beyond. The lock wasn't the kind you'd expect, not one of those big, heavy padlocks, but a smaller latch lock that looked like it had been replaced recently. I don't even want to admit how easy it was to pick it open with the old tension wrench I kept in my glove compartment. I told myself I wasn't breaking the law, I was just finding out the truth. When I rolled the door up, the smell hit me first, not bad, just odd. Like old cardboard, motor oil, and something faintly metallic. Inside, there weren't stacks of boxes or piles of old furniture like she'd claimed. Instead, there were only a few items, each more suspicious than the last. Against the back wall sat a large black duffel bag that looked stuffed to the point of bursting. Beside it was a heavy-duty toolbox, the kind you see in a mechanic's garage. And next to that, a stack of sealed, unmarked cardboard boxes, each with a shipping label that had been peeled away, leaving behind a square of sticky residue. I crouched down, my hands shaking as I reached for the duffel. It was heavier than I expected, and when I unzipped it just enough to peek inside, my stomach twisted. Inside were stacks of what looked like legal documents, hundreds of them, bound in rubber bands, along with a laptop that was powered off but still warm to the touch. This wasn't some forgotten storage of personal junk. Someone was actively using this space. I didn't dare dig too deep, but I spotted something tucked halfway under the toolbox that froze me in place, a set of car keys attached to a keychain I recognized instantly. It was Madison's. I picked them up, turning them over in my hand, and saw a small plastic fob with the logo of a private security company. Why would my wife have a key fob for a place like that? And more importantly, why was it hidden here, with someone else clearly having access to the same space? The sound of a distant engine made me snap out of it. I shoved everything back exactly as I'd found it, rolled the door down, and locked it, my pulse skyrocketing. As I got into my car, headlights appeared at the far end of the lot. A dark SUV was pulling in, and though I couldn't see the driver clearly, I didn't stick around to get a better look. I drove off, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. That night, Madison texted me again, just 3 words, "We can't talk." No explanation. No follow-up. Just those words, like a command, not a request. And that's when I realized, she knew I was getting closer, and she wasn't warning me to protect herself. She was warning me because whatever I'd stumbled into, it was bigger than just the two of us. By the next morning, I couldn't focus on anything except that storage unit. Every thought, every sound, even the way my coffee tasted seemed to push me back to the image of that black duffel and the stack of stripped shipping boxes. I wanted to believe it was all just, strange but harmless. Maybe she was helping someone move. Maybe she was keeping something for a friend. But then the memory of that still warm laptop and her security company key fob would slam into me, and the knot in my stomach would tighten all over again. I decided to see her, but I couldn't go in guns blazing. Madison shuts down the second she feels cornered, and I'd learned over the years that if I wanted answers, I had to make her think she was in control of the conversation. So, I texted her something bland, just asking if she wanted to grab lunch. She agreed, though she picked the place, a crowded little restaurant downtown with too much noise to overhear anything clearly. That alone told me she was thinking about what she didn't want to say. When I arrived, she was already seated, flipping through the menu like she hadn't already decided on the one thing she always ordered. I slid into the booth and tried to smile, but my voice cracked when I said, "You've been busy lately." She didn't flinch, didn't react, just kept scanning the menu until I added, "I drove past a storage place the other day. You ever go to one of those?" That got me a reaction, not much, but enough. Her hand froze halfway to her water glass, and her eyes flicked to mine before darting back to the menu. "Why would I?" she said lightly, but the way she tightened her grip on the glass made my chest feel tight. I wanted to push harder, to see how far I could get before she bolted, but the sound of a chair scraping against the tile made her head snap up. A man had just walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket. I didn't recognize him, but Madison's entire body went stiff. She muttered, "I need the restroom," and slipped past me so fast I barely had time to move my leg out of the way. She didn't go to the restroom. I watched her through the reflection in the restaurant's window as she walked straight outside, phone already in her hand. The man didn't follow her, but he didn't take his eyes off the door she'd just used. My pulse was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. When she came back 10 minutes later, her face was pale, and she didn't touch her food. She mumbled something about having to cut lunch short and left cash on the table before I could even respond. I followed her outside, but by the time I hit the sidewalk, she was gone, no sign of her car, no sign of her. That night, I checked my phone more than 20 times, waiting for her to text. She didn't. But around 11, my doorbell rang. When I looked through the peephole, there was no one there. Just an envelope on the mat. Inside was a single Polaroid photo, of me, sitting in my car, parked across from the storage unit. The picture had been taken from behind, like the photographer had been standing just a few feet away. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Someone knew I'd been there. Someone was watching. And if Madison knew, maybe that's why she told me we couldn't talk. I didn't sleep after finding that Polaroid. I just sat on the couch with every light in the living room on, the photo lying on the coffee table like it was staring back at me. My mind kept going over the same question, who took it, and how close had they been to me without me even noticing. By the time the sky started to lighten, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to wait for Madison to explain. I was going back to that storage unit. I drove there mid-morning, figuring the place would be quiet and whoever was keeping tabs on me wouldn't expect me to show up so soon after being warned off. The lot was nearly empty, just a couple of cars near the far row. My stomach was tight the whole time, and I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting that beat-up truck or the black SUV to pull in behind me. When I reached the unit, my heart sank. The lock was gone. Not broken, not cut, just replaced entirely. It was a heavier lock this time, the kind you can't pop open with a tension wrench and luck. I was standing there, debating if I should try to get it off, when I heard the low rumble of an engine behind me. I turned just in time to see a dark sedan creeping down the row, moving slow like it was scanning the numbers on the units. I froze, hoping maybe they'd drive past, but instead the car rolled to a stop a few feet away. The driver's window slid down, and there he was, the same man I'd seen at the diner, the one Madison couldn't look at without flinching. Up close, he looked older than I expected, his eyes sharp in a way that made me feel like he could read every thought in my head. "You lost?" he asked, voice calm but carrying a weight that made my mouth go dry. I stammered something about looking for the wrong unit, trying to sound casual, but he didn't take his eyes off me. Then he smiled, not a friendly smile, more like someone humoring a child. "Careful where you wander. Not all doors are meant to be opened." He drove off slowly, never looking back, and I stood there until the sound of his engine faded. My hands were trembling as I got back in my car, but I didn't drive home. Instead, I parked a block away and watched the entrance to the storage facility from a distance. Less than an hour later, I saw the sedan return, and this time, Madison was in the passenger seat. She didn't get out. She didn't look around. She just sat there while the man got out, unlocked the unit, and went inside. 10 minutes later, he came back carrying the same black duffel bag I'd seen days earlier. When they drove away, I felt this crushing mix of anger and helplessness. Whatever was going on, she was in deep enough that she wasn't just hiding it from me, she was letting this man control it entirely. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. I needed to know. That night, as I sat staring at my phone, wondering if she'd contact me again, a text came through from an unknown number: "Tomorrow. Noon. Same diner. Come alone." No name, no details, but I knew it was her. I didn't realize until the next day that this meeting would be the one where everything finally came to the surface, and I'd have to decide if I was willing to live with what I learned. I got to the diner early the next day, my stomach tight from a mix of nerves and caffeine. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, and every car that pulled into the lot made me tense. Madison arrived exactly at noon, slipping into the booth across from me without a word. She looked different, tired, but lighter somehow, like the weight she'd been carrying had shifted. Before I could say anything, she leaned in. "You were right to be suspicious. I was involved in something I never should have touched, and it had nothing to do with us falling apart. I thought leaving you would keep you out of it, but I was wrong." Her voice cracked a little, and for the first time in weeks, I saw the Madison I used to know, not the guarded stranger she'd become. I didn't push her for details, not because I didn't want them, but because I realized I didn't need them. Whatever was in that storage unit, whatever that man represented, it was a part of her life that was over now. She told me she'd cut ties, handed everything over to the authorities, and taken steps to make sure she wouldn't be dragged back into it. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. "I regret walking away from us. I regret thinking you wouldn't fight for me. I didn't want you caught in the crossfire, but I also didn't give you the chance to stand beside me." We sat there for a long time, sipping coffee in silence, just existing in the same space without the tension that had been suffocating us. She reached across the table, took my hand, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I believed we might actually be able to fix things. Weeks later, we started going to counseling. No grand declarations, no pretending like the past never happened, just two people slowly learning how to be honest again. I still don't know every detail of what happened in those missing days, and maybe I never will, but I do know this: letting her walk out that first night didn't end us. It gave us the space to come back together on our own terms. So, yeah, it didn't end the way I thought it would. It ended better. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that sometimes the truth isn't about getting every answer, it's about knowing which ones matter. If you've been through something like this, or if there was a moment in this story that hit you personally, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Share your thoughts, your own stories, and let's talk about it. You've been watching Reddit Confessions. Thanks for sticking with me through this one.